Warfare is the way of deception. Thus, although you are capable, display incapability to your enemy. When committed to employing your forces, feign inactivity. When your objective is nearby, make it appear as if distant. When far away, create the illusion of being nearby. Sun Tzu. So the American question today is, what is the art of war? The Art of War was written by a man named Sun Tzu. And we're going to go over a little bit of the brief history of who he was. The art of war was theorized to have been the work of a military strategist known as Sun Tzu. It is believed that he lived between the years 772 to 479 BC. His influence on the school of military in China came about as one of the philosophical systems of the 100 schools of thought of the spring and autumn period. His work advocated military preparedness in maintaining peace and social order. So it's a little bit of the history about Sun Tzu. However, I think there was a story that was told about Sun Tzu and his philosophies that is very eloquently captivating and covers a host of his philosophies, and it's actually the story of a harem. So it is claimed that Sun Tzu served King Holu of Wu in the Wu-Chou Wars of 512 to 506 BC. Holu wanted to test Sun Tzu's skills and commitment before appointing him to lead, so Holu assigned Sun Tzu to train his 180 concubines to be soldiers. Sun Tzu divided the harem into 2 companies, each with the king's 2 favorites as their commanders. When he gave the first order to face right, the women laughed, not taking the exercise seriously. Sun Tzu repeated his command, and again they giggled. Then he had the 2 commanders executed and replaced. Afterwards, the women obeyed his commands without hesitation, and Holu hired Sun Tzu as his general. That story, whether true or not, absolutely encapsulates all of Sun Tzu's philosophies. His command structure, his dedication to obedience, and his discipline. These are all incredibly important things to be thinking about before we dive further into this book, because they're the foundations of his philosophies. So Sun Tzu's philosophies, Sun Tzu's concepts may have been derived from earlier philosophies. His theories were put into practice by the king of the state of Qin, Yi Shang, 259 to 210 BC, who, by following Sun Tzu's philosophy, conquered the other states through the policy of total war and established the first emperor of China. Now, there is a lot of debate about Sun Tzu's existence. The debate has raged as to whether or not Sun Tzu even existed at all, whether his works were the genius of a single man or a collection of military strategic wisdom prove that someone existed to produce the art of war. To this day, the tradition has been generally accepted that the work is Sun Tzu's. So now that we've gotten a little bit of history put aside about who he was, when he was, and all of that, now we're going to dive into actual quotes from Sun Tzu's work. And as I go through these, I don't know if I'm going to comment on all of them because they're so profound and they speak so much on their own. I really don't know if it's necessary to. I did hand select some directly from the book, and some I used the abridged versions just because the quotes from the book are a little long. So it was easier to get the shortened version to kind of compact and cover all of it because there's so much wisdom in this book. So without further ado, let's go through them. Know thyself. Know thy enemy. 1,000 battles, 1,000 victories. Move not unless you see an advantage. Use not your troops unless there is something to be gained, unless the position is critical. If you expose the army to a prolonged campaign, the state's resources will be inadequate. No country has ever profited from protracted warfare. The state is impoverished by the army when it transports provisions far off. When provisions are transported far off, the people are impoverished. When goods are expensive, the people's wealth will be exhausted. When their wealth is exhausted, they will be extremely hard-pressed to supply their military impositions. When their strength has been expended and their wealth depleted, then the house in the central plains will be empty. The expenses of the people will be some 7/10 of whatever they have. The ruler's irreparable expenditures will consume 6/10 of his resources. Display profits to entice your enemy. Create disorder in their forces and take them. Build your opponent a golden bridge to then retreat across. A wise general will concentrate on securing provisions from the enemy. Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. Engage people with what they expect. It is what they are able to discern and confirms their projections. It settles them into predictable patterns of response, occupying their minds while you wait for the extraordinary moment, that which they cannot anticipate. When the enemy is relaxed, make them toil. When full, starve them. When settled, make them move. Move swift as the wind and closely formed as the wood. Attack like the fire and be still as the mountain. Strategies without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. Rouse him and learn the principles of his activity or inactivity. Force him to reveal himself, so as to find out his vulnerable spots. Bravery without forethought causes a man to fight blindly and desperately like a mad bull. Such an opponent must not be encountered with brute force, but may be lured into an ambush and slain. Be extremely subtle, even to the point of formlessness. Be extremely mysterious, even to the point of soundlessness. Thereby, you can be the director of your opponent's fate. If he sends reinforcements everywhere, he will everywhere be weak. The opportunity to secure ourselves against defeat lies in our own hands, but the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. So those were the main ones that I pulled from the art of war, and there was a lot more I wish I could have put in there. I just think it makes the video too long, and this is why I believe that China is probably one of the oldest surviving civilizations. The amount of wisdom when it comes to strategy and understanding war is incredible in this book, and there is a reason it is studied around the world. And if you have the time, it's actually a fairly short book, and I highly recommend reading it because I have the extended version with the histories and everything. You can just get the straight strategy tactics from any bookstore, and I would recommend to do so. That's all for today.